The telegram fluttered in Delilah Foster's trembling hands as the stagecoach lurched westward across Montana territory. April 1869. This paper represented her last hope, a marriage agreement with a stranger named Beau Nightingale, a cattle rancher in Bannack. Freedom from her past had cost every penny she possessed, but as her fingers traced the raised welts beneath her sleeve, she knew any price was worth paying. The journey had taken weeks from Philadelphia, each mile increasing her nervousness. What kind of man would want a wife he'd never met? What would he think when he saw the truth of her? The scars that crisscrossed her back, shoulders, and arms told a story she wished to forget. "Bannack ahead, folks," the driver called out, his voice carrying over the rumble of wheels. Delilah pressed her face to the dusty window. The town materialized like a mirage against the rugged Montana landscape, a collection of wooden structures strung along a wide main street, backed by mountains that seemed to touch the impossibly blue sky. Her heart hammered against her ribs. There would be no going back. When the stagecoach finally rolled to a stop outside the Bannack Hotel, Delilah waited for the other passengers to disembark before gathering her single carpet bag. She had traveled light, leaving behind everything from her previous life except for the clothes on her back and a few meager possessions. The air was cooler than she expected, crisp with the promise of spring, though patches of snow still clung to the shadowed areas. She pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders and stepped down onto Montana soil. "Miss Foster," the voice was deep, resonant. Delilah turned to find herself facing a tall man with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. He removed his hat, revealing hair the shade of wheat, touched with gold by the sun. "Mr. Nightingale?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, a slight smile softening his otherwise serious expression. "Beau Nightingale, welcome to Bannack." He was younger than she'd imagined, perhaps 30 or so, broad-shouldered and solid in a way that Eastern men rarely were. His clothes were practical worn denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a leather vest. The six-shooter holstered at his hip wasn't for show, it was a tool like the knife sheathed on his other side. "Thank you," Delilah managed, suddenly acutely aware of her travel-worn appearance. "I apologize for my state. The journey was longer than anticipated." "No need for apologies," Beau said. He hesitated, then extended his hand. "May I take your bag?" Delilah nodded, handing over her small carpet bag. Their fingers brushed and she flinched involuntarily. If Beau noticed, he made no mention of it. "I've arranged a room for you at the hotel," he said, gesturing to the two-story building behind them. "I thought you might want to rest before we discuss arrangements." Relief flooded through her. She had feared he would immediately take her to a preacher or worse, directly to his home. "That's very considerate, Mr. Nightingale." "Beau," he corrected gently. "We don't stand much on formality out here." "Beau," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. He led her into the hotel, a surprisingly clean establishment with polished wooden floors and actual curtains on the windows. At the front desk, a plump woman with kind eyes greeted them. "Mrs. Holloway, this is Miss Foster," Beau said. "Welcome to Bannack, dear," Mrs. Holloway said warmly. "We've got your room all ready, best one in the house with a view of the mountains." "Thank you," Delilah said, slightly overwhelmed by the kindness. "I'll leave you to get settled," Beau said. "Would it be agreeable if I called for you around supper time? We could talk over a meal at the restaurant next door." "Yes, that would be fine," Delilah agreed, grateful for the chance to collect herself before their first real conversation. Once alone in her room, Delilah sank onto the bed and allowed herself a moment of relief. The room was small but clean, with a real feather mattress, washstand, and mirror. She approached the mirror cautiously, assessing her reflection. The woman staring back was a stranger, pale, with shadows beneath her blue eyes. Her chestnut hair had come loose from its pins during the journey, and her dress was wrinkled beyond salvation. At 24, she looked older, worn down by circumstances beyond her control. Delilah unpacked her meager belongings and used the pitcher of water on the washstand to clean the travel dust from her face and hands. From her bag, She withdrew her only other dress, a modest blue cotton that had seen better days, but was at least clean. After changing, she sat by the window, watching the town of Bannock go about its business. Men on horseback, women carrying baskets, a group of children playing some game in the dusty street. Normal life, something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. As the afternoon light began to fade, a knock at her door announced Beau's arrival. Delilah smoothed her dress, tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, and opened the door. Beau had clearly made an effort with his appearance. His hair was combed, his shirt was clean, and he'd traded his work boots for slightly less weathered ones. He held his hat in his hands. "Miss Foster," he said with a nod, "you look rested. Thank you, and please call me Delilah." They walked in awkward silence to the restaurant, a homey establishment with checked tablecloths and the mouth-watering aroma of home cooking. "Best food in the territory," Beau said as they were seated at a corner table. "Mrs. Peterson makes biscuits that would make an angel weep." The image brought a small smile to Delilah's lips. "That's quite a recommendation." After they ordered roast beef, potatoes, and those famous biscuits, the awkwardness settled between them again. Beau cleared his throat. "I imagine you have questions," he said. "As do you, I'm sure," Delilah replied cautiously. "Ladies first," Beau offered with a slight smile. Delilah took a sip of water, gathering her thoughts. "Why did you advertise for a wife, Mr. Beau?" He considered her question, his gray eyes serious. "Straight to it then, I respect that." He rubbed his jaw, which carried the shadow of a day's stubble. "I have a ranch about 5 miles outside of town. Good land, good cattle. I've built a solid house, have a decent income, but it's no life for a man alone." He paused. "I'm not one for saloons or dance hall girls. I want a real home, maybe children someday, and there aren't many unmarried women in these parts." "That's honest," Delilah said, surprised by his forthrightness. "Don't believe in starting anything with lies," Beau said simply. "Now may I ask why a woman like yourself would answer such an advertisement? You seem educated, well-spoken. I'd imagine you'd have prospects back east." Delilah looked down at her hands, twisting her napkin. "My circumstances changed," she said carefully. "I needed a fresh start, somewhere far from Philadelphia." Their food arrived, temporarily halting the conversation. Delilah was grateful for the interruption, for the chance to compose herself. "These really are exceptional biscuits," she said after taking a bite. "Told you," Beau said with a genuine smile that transformed his face, creating crinkles at the corners of his eyes. "Mrs. Peterson guards her recipe like gold dust." They ate in silence for a few moments before Beau spoke again. "I should tell you about the ranch," he said. "It's not fancy, but it's solid. 300 acres, mostly for grazing. I run about 200 head of cattle. The house has 4 rooms, kitchen, parlor, and 2 bedrooms. He paused, a flush creeping up his neck. "I've prepared the 2nd bedroom for you, I don't expect. That is, I want you to be comfortable, to have time to get to know each other proper like." Relief flooded through Delilah. "Thank you, that's very considerate. I have 2 hired hands who live in the Bunkhouse brothers, Daniel and Thomas Wilson. Good men, hard workers. There's also Mrs. Quinn, who comes by 3 days a week to help with cooking and washing. The nearest neighbor is the Henderson family, about 2 miles west." As Beau continued describing the ranch and the surrounding area, Delilah found herself relaxing slightly. He was straightforward, perhaps even kind. Maybe this arrangement wouldn't be the nightmare she had feared. "If you'd prefer to stay in town a bit longer," Beau was saying, "I understand. Or if you've changed your mind entirely about our arrangement, I can arrange passage back east." The offer stunned her. "You would do that?" "After paying for my journey here," Beau met her eyes steadily. "I'm looking for a wife, Miss Foster Delilah, not a prisoner. Whatever's brought you all this way, I reckon it was important, but I won't hold you to anything if you've had second thoughts." For the first time since arriving, Delilah felt a genuine smile form. "I haven't changed my mind, Beau. I'd like to see your ranch tomorrow, if that's agreeable." The relief on his face was evident. "More than agreeable." After dinner, Beau walked her back to the hotel. At the entrance, he awkwardly removed his hat again. "I'll come by around 9 tomorrow morning," he said. "We can stop by the general store if you need any supplies before heading to the ranch." "Thank you for dinner," Delilah said, "and for being understanding." Beau nodded, a slight smile on his lips. "Sleep well, Delilah." She watched him walk away, his tall figure silhouetted against the last light of day. Perhaps, just perhaps, she had made the right decision. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Delilah had slept better than she had in months, the exhaustion of her journey finally catching up with her. She dressed carefully in her traveling outfit, which Mrs. Holloway had kindly pressed for her. Precisely at 9, Beau arrived with a wagon instead of his horse. "Thought it would be more comfortable for you," he explained as he helped her up onto the seat. The general store was their first stop. Delilah hesitated at the entrance. "Is something wrong?" Beau asked. I don't have much money left," she admitted, cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Beau's expression softened. "I don't expect you to pay for anything, Delilah. You're going to be my wife. What's mine is yours." The simple statement stunned her. In her previous life, nothing had ever truly been hers. Inside the store, Beau introduced her to the proprietor, an elderly man named Mr. Collins. "So you're the mail-order bride everyone's been talking about," Mr. Collins said with a friendly smile. "About time Nightingale found himself a wife. Man can raise cattle but can't cook worth a damn." Delilah found herself smiling at the good-natured ribbing. Beau merely shook his head, the corner of his mouth turned up in amusement. "Get whatever you need," Beau told her, "and whatever you want." She selected practical items, sturdy boots better suited to ranch life, a warm shawl, work gloves, and some basic toiletries. Beau added bolts of fabric when he saw her eyeing them. "For new dresses," he said. "Mrs. Quinn is handy with a needle if you're not." As they were preparing to leave, a group of women entered the store, their curious gazes immediately fixing on Delilah. "Ladies," Beau greeted them with a tip of his hat. "May I introduce Miss Delilah Foster, soon to be Mrs. Nightingale. Delilah, these are some of our neighbors, Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Blake, and Mrs. Wilson." The women surrounded her, full of questions and welcomes. It was overwhelming but not unpleasant. For the first time, Delilah allowed herself to consider that she might find not just safety here, but perhaps even friendship. As they drove out of town, the landscape opened up before them, rolling hills covered in spring grass, patches of wildflowers adding splashes of color, all beneath that enormous Montana sky. "It's beautiful," Delilah breathed. "Different from Philadelphia, I imagine," Beau said, glancing at her. "Very, but in the best possible way." The road followed a creek for several miles before turning west toward a series of low hills. As they crested the final rise, Beau's ranch came into view, a sturdy log house with a covered porch, a large barn, several outbuildings, and corrals containing horses and cattle. Smoke rose from the chimney, and somewhere a dog barked. "Welcome to the Nightingale Ranch," Beau said, a note of pride in his voice. As they approached, a large black and white dog came bounding toward the wagon, barking joyfully. "That's Scout," Beau said. "Best cattle dog in the territory. Don't worry, he's friendly." Scout circled the wagon as they pulled up to the house, his tail wagging furiously. A middle-aged woman with graying hair tucked beneath a kerchief emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. "You must be Miss Foster," she called out. "I'm Martha Quinn. I've been getting the house ready for you." "Thank you," Delilah said as Beau helped her down from the wagon. Scout immediately came to investigate her, sniffing her skirts before sitting expectantly at her feet. "He wants you to pet him," Beau explained with a chuckle. Delilah hesitantly extended her hand. Scout licked it, then pushed his head against her palm. She smiled, scratching behind his ears. "He's won you over already," Beau observed, something warm in his voice. "I've never had a dog before," Delilah admitted. "Well, now you do," Beau said simply. The tour of the house revealed a home far more comfortable than Delilah had dared hope for. The kitchen was spacious and well-equipped, with a large wood stove, a proper sink with a pump, and a sturdy table. The parlor contained several comfortable chairs, bookshelves filled with actual books, and a stone fireplace. Her bedroom was the greatest surprise, a large, airy space with a real bed, a wardrobe, a dressing table with a mirror, and curtains that matched the quilt on the bed. Mrs. Quinn made the curtains and quilt, Beau explained, looking slightly embarrassed. Said a woman would want things to be pretty. It's lovely, Delilah said sincerely, touching the quilt with reverent fingers. Truly. Beau's room was across the hall, the door standing open to reveal a similar layout but with more masculine furnishings. The tour continued outside, where Beau showed her the barn, the chicken coop, the vegetable garden, and the springhouse where they kept milk and butter cool. It's all so. Delilah struggled to find the right word. Rustic, Beau suggested. Perfect, she corrected him. It feels like a real home. Something in Beau's expression softened. That's what I've been trying to build, a real home. That evening after Mrs. Quinn had departed and they'd enjoyed a surprisingly tasty stew that Beau had prepared, they sat in the parlor. Scout lay at Delilah's feet, completely won over by his new mistress. When would you like to be married? Beau asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. The question brought Delilah back to reality. For a few hours, she had almost forgotten the reason she was here. Whenever you think best, she said cautiously. Beau studied her. Most folks in town are expecting us to marry this Sunday after church services, but we can wait if you'd prefer. Delilah considered her options. Waiting might seem more proper, but what was the point of delaying the inevitable? And being unmarried in this house would likely cause gossip. Sunday is fine, she said finally. Beau nodded. I'll let Reverend Johnson know. He hesitated, then added, there's something else we should discuss. Delilah tensed, knowing what was coming, the physical aspects of marriage. Her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them in her lap. You should know that I don't expect anything from you that you're not ready for, Beau said, his voice gentle but firm. Marriage out here is a partnership, Delilah. I need a wife, yes, but more than that, I need someone to share this life with. The rest. That can wait until you're comfortable with me. Tears pricked at Delilah's eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. She blinked them away. Thank you, she whispered. Beau shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable with her emotion. It's getting late. You must be tired after all the excitement. Taking the offered escape, Delilah nodded and rose. Good night, Beau. Good night, Delilah. He remained seated, watching her go with those steady gray eyes. In the privacy of her new room, Delilah allowed a few tears to fall, not tears of fear or sadness, but of relief. Against all odds, she seemed to have found herself engaged to a decent man. The days leading up to Sunday fell into a gentle rhythm. Delilah learned the workings of the ranch, helped Mrs. Quinn with household tasks, and began to feel useful for the first time in years. Beau was gone much of the day, working with his cattle and his hired hands, but they shared meals together. And each evening they would sit in the parlor, sometimes talking, sometimes reading in companionable silence. On Saturday evening, Mrs. Quinn stayed late to help Delilah prepare for the wedding. The older woman had brought a dress for Delilah, a simple but pretty blue gown that had belonged to her daughter. She moved to California with her husband last year, Mrs. Quinn explained as she helped Delilah try on the dress. She'd want you to have it. Blue's a proper color for a bride out here. Not many can afford white, and it's not practical anyway. The dress fit almost perfectly, needing only minor alterations which Mrs. Quinn completed on the spot with efficient stitches. You're a good match for him, the older woman said suddenly as she worked. Beau's a good man, best in the territory if you ask me, been through his share of hardship, but it didn't break him, made him stronger instead. What sort of hardship? Delilah asked, curious about the man she was to marry tomorrow. Mrs. Quinn's hands stilled for a moment. Not my story to tell, dear, but I will say this: there's no man who'll understand suffering better than Beau Nightingale, no man who'll be more gentle with someone who's known pain. The words sent a shiver down Delilah's spine. Had he somehow guessed her secret, or was Mrs. Quinn simply being kind to a nervous bride? Sunday morning dawned clear and bright. Mrs. Quinn arrived early to help Delilah prepare, brushing her chestnut hair until it shone before arranging it in a simple but elegant style. The blue dress brought out the color of Delilah's eyes, and for the first time in years, she looked at her reflection and saw something other than fear. Beau was waiting for her in the parlor, dressed in a dark suit that made him look both handsome and uncomfortable. His eyes widened when he saw her. You look beautiful, he said simply. "You look very handsome yourself," Delilah replied, surprised to find she meant it. In his Sunday best, with his wheat gold hair combed neatly, Beau Nightingale was a striking figure of a man. The church in Bannack was a simple wooden structure, but someone had decorated it with spring wildflowers for the occasion. It seemed the entire town had turned out for the wedding, filling the benches to capacity. Delilah felt the weight of curious stares as Beau escorted her down the aisle. Reverend Johnson's ceremony was brief but heartfelt. When the time came to exchange vows, Beau's voice was steady and sure. Delilah's trembled slightly, but she managed to speak the words clearly. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the Reverend announced. "You may kiss your bride." Delilah's heart hammered in her chest as Beau leaned forward. His kiss was gentle, his lips barely brushing against hers, respectful of her nervousness. Yet even that brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through her. The celebration afterward was held at the town hall, with seemingly every resident of Bannack in attendance. There was music, dancing, and more food than Delilah had seen in one place since leaving Philadelphia. People she'd never met congratulated her, welcoming her to the community with genuine warmth. Through it all, Beau remained at her side, a steady presence that somehow kept her anxiety at bay. When she became overwhelmed, he somehow sensed it, finding quiet corners where she could catch her breath before returning to the festivities. It was late afternoon when they finally departed, amid cheers and well wishes from the townsfolk. The ride back to the ranch, their home now, was quiet, both of them tired from the day's excitement. "Was it very terrible?" Beau asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Delilah looked at him in surprise. "The wedding? No, not at all. Everyone was very kind." "You looked frightened at times," he observed. "Not frightened, just unused to so much attention." She hesitated, then added, "It was a lovely day, Beau, thank you." His smile was worth the effort of those words. "You're welcome, Mrs. Nightingale." The title startled her. She was someone's wife now. Delilah Nightingale. Back at the ranch, Beau unhitched the wagon and tended to the horses while Delilah changed out of her wedding dress. When he came inside, he'd also changed back into his regular clothes. "Hungry?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "Though we certainly ate well at the celebration." Together they prepared a simple supper, moving around the kitchen with surprising ease, as if they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Afterward they settled in the parlor as had become their custom, Scout sprawled between them. As the evening grew late, tension began to build in Delilah's chest. The wedding night. Despite Beau's assurances, would he expect his husbandly rights now? As if reading her thoughts, Beau cleared his throat. "I meant what I said before, Delilah. Nothing changes unless you want it to." Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by guilt. What kind of wife was she, dreading her husband's touch? A normal woman would be eager, or at least accepting. "I should explain," she began haltingly. Beau shook his head. "You don't owe me any explanations, not yet. When you're ready to tell me your story, I'll listen. Until then, I can be patient." Impulsively, Delilah reached across the space between them and placed her hand on his. "Thank you." His hand turned beneath hers, their palms meeting, fingers intertwining. The simple contact was both terrifying and comforting. "Good night, Beau," she said softly, withdrawing her hand. "Good night, Delilah," he replied. "Sleep well." In the days that followed, they settled into married life with surprising ease. Delilah took over the household management, finding satisfaction in creating order and comfort. Beau continued his work with the cattle, often returning tired but content. Each evening they would share the events of their day over supper, then retire to the parlor for conversation or quiet companionship. Sometimes Beau would read aloud from one of his books. He had a pleasant voice that brought the stories to life. Other times, Delilah would mend clothes or work on the quilt she had started. Nights remained separate, each retiring to their own bedroom when the evening grew late. If the arrangement bothered Beau, he gave no sign of it. He remained unfailingly kind, his patience apparently limitless. 3 weeks after the wedding, disaster struck. A spring storm blew in from the mountains, bringing with it torrential rain that quickly turned the creek at the edge of their property into a raging torrent. Beau and his hired hands worked frantically to move the cattle to higher ground, but several calves were caught in the floodwaters. Delilah watched from the porch as Beau rode his horse directly into the swollen creek to rescue one of the struggling animals. Her heart nearly stopped when both horse and rider momentarily disappeared beneath the churning water, only to emerge several yards downstream, the calf somehow secured. By the time the storm passed and the men returned to the house, they were soaked through and exhausted. Delilah immediately set about preparing hot food and coffee while the men dried off and changed. "You're limping," she observed when Beau emerged from their bedroom in dry clothes. "Slipped on some rocks," he said dismissively. "Nothing serious." But as the evening wore on, it became clear that Beau was in considerable pain. When he thought she wasn't looking, his face would tighten, his jaw clenching against the discomfort. "Let me see," Delilah insisted after the hired hands had departed for their bunkhouse. "It's nothing," Beau protested, but Delilah stood her ground, hands on hips. "Beau Nightingale, I am your wife. If you're hurt, I need to know." Something in her tone must have convinced him. With a sigh, he eased his boot off, revealing an ankle already swollen and bruised. "That's not nothing," Delilah said, kneeling to examine the injury. "It needs to be wrapped and elevated." She gathered supplies, clean bandages, a basin of cool water and witch hazel, and set about tending to his injury. Her hands were gentle but confident as she bathed the swollen ankle, applied the witch hazel, and wrapped it firmly in clean bandages. "Where did you learn to do that?" Beau asked, watching her work. Delilah froze momentarily, then resumed her task. "My father was a doctor," she said quietly. "I often assisted him." It wasn't a lie, not exactly. Her father had indeed been a physician. What she omitted was how that same education had been twisted for darker purposes after his death. "You have a healer's touch," Beau observed. "Hold still," Delilah instructed, ignoring the compliment. "I need to make sure this isn't too tight." When she had finished, she helped him to the sofa and placed a cushion beneath his injured ankle. "You need to stay off it for a few days," she said firmly. "Doctor's orders." A smile tugged at the corner of Beau's mouth. "Yes, madam." For the next 3 days, Beau was largely confined to the house, an arrangement that clearly tested his patience. Yet he bore it with good humor, using the time to catch up on his ledgers and correspondence. On the third afternoon, a sudden crash from the kitchen had Delilah rushing to find Beau trying to stand beside an overturned chair, his face pale with pain. "What are you doing?" she demanded, hurrying to support him before he could fall. "Trying to reach the coffee," he admitted sheepishly. "Didn't want to bother you. So instead you decided to break your neck," Delilah scolded, helping him back to the sofa. "For heaven's sake, Beau, just ask for help when you need it." "Not used to needing help," he muttered. Delilah sighed, some of her irritation fading. "Well, you have it whether you want it or not. That's what marriage is supposed to be, isn't it? Helping each other." Beau looked at her thoughtfully. "Yes, I suppose it is." That evening, as they sat in the parlor, a comfortable silence between them, Beau spoke unexpectedly. "My father died when I was 12, he said, his voice matter of fact. "Caught pneumonia in the winter of '51. By spring, he was gone." Delilah set aside her mending, recognizing the significance of this unprompted revelation. "I'm sorry." "My mother tried to keep the farm going. We had a small place in Missouri then, but it was too much for her. We lost it within a year." His gaze was focused on something distant, something only he could see. "She remarried the following winter. Artemis Blackwell seemed decent enough at first." A shadow crossed his face and Delilah felt a chill of recognition. "He wasn't," she said softly. "It wasn't a question." "No," Beau agreed. "He wasn't, had a taste for whiskey and a heavy hand when he drank. My mother bore the worst of it." His eyes finally met hers, and in them she saw the same haunted look that sometimes greeted her in the mirror. "I tried to protect her," he continued. "First time I stood up to him, I was 14, got this for my trouble." He touched a thin scar that ran along his jawline, barely visible beneath the stubble. "But I kept standing up, kept getting knocked down, until one day I didn't." "What happened?" Delilah asked, though she feared she knew the answer. "I killed him," Beau said flatly. "I was 17. He'd been drinking for 3 days straight, came after my mother with a fireplace poker. I shot him. Delilah's breath caught in her throat, not horror at the revelation, but a strange sense of understanding. The sheriff ruled it self-defense, Beau continued. Most of the town knew what kind of man Blackwell was, but we couldn't stay there, not with the whispers and the looks. My mother had a brother in Montana Territory. We came west, started over. Your mother, is she? Died of influenza 5 years ago, Beau said. But she had good years here first, peaceful years. He drew a deep breath. I tell you this, Delilah, not to burden you, but so you understand I know what it means to be afraid in your own home, to carry scars that no one else can see. The words hung between them, an offering and an invitation. My father died when I was 16, Delilah said after a long silence, the words emerging as if from someone else. He was respected, a good physician. My mother had died years before, so it was just the two of us. She twisted her hands in her lap. His brother, my uncle, became my guardian. He wasn't a kind man. Beau remained silent, giving her space to continue or stop as she chose. He was also a doctor, Delilah went on, her voice growing distant. He had theories about pain, about how to use it to treat certain conditions. He called it therapeutic discipline. Her fingers unconsciously went to her sleeve, touching the raised marks beneath the fabric. He experimented on his patients, on me. The words were barely audible. For years, I was his subject, his project. Beau's expression darkened, but he remained still, listening. I escaped last November, Delilah said, drawing strength from the simple fact of her survival. Stole enough money for passage west and answered your advertisement. I couldn't stay in Philadelphia, he'd have found me. And the scars? Beau asked gently. Delilah's hand tightened on her sleeve. They're everywhere, she whispered. My back, my shoulders, my arms, marks from his treatments. For a moment, Beau didn't move. Then, slowly, he reached across the space between them and took her hand in his. May I see? He asked, his voice steady. Terror and relief warred within her. After a moment, Delilah nodded. With trembling fingers, she unbuttoned the cuff of her sleeve and slowly rolled it up, revealing the web of scars that marked her forearm, some thin and white with age, others still pink and relatively new. She kept her eyes fixed on the floor, unable to bear the sight of disgust or pity on his face. Look at me, Beau said softly. Reluctantly, Delilah raised her eyes. What she saw in his expression wasn't revulsion or pity, but a deep, burning anger not directed at her, but for her. No one, he said, his voice low and fierce, will ever hurt you again, not while I draw breath. The promise, spoken with such conviction, broke something open inside her. Tears that had been held back for years suddenly flowed freely. Beau hesitated only a moment before moving to sit beside her on the sofa, gathering her carefully into his arms. I've got you, he murmured against her hair as she wept. I've got you, Delilah, she cried until she had no tears left, soaking the front of his shirt. When the storm of emotion finally passed, she remained in the circle of his arms, too exhausted to move, too comforted to want to. I'm sorry, she eventually managed, her voice hoarse. Don't be, Beau said. Not ever for that. Reluctantly, Delilah straightened, wiping at her tear-stained face. I must look a fright. You look brave, Beau countered. His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb gently brushing away a lingering tear. Bravest person I've ever known. The tenderness in his touch, in his gaze, awakened something she thought had been destroyed years ago, a flicker of warmth, of wanting. Before she could think better of it, Delilah leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. Beau went still with surprise, then responded with careful gentleness, letting her set the pace, the pressure. When she drew back, his eyes were questioning. I'm not sure I know how to be a proper wife, Delilah said softly, but I'd like to try, with you. There's no hurry, Beau assured her. We have time, Delilah, all the time you need. That night, for the first time, they shared a bed, simply holding each other through the darkness, finding comfort in the closeness, the shared warmth. When morning came, Delilah woke feeling safer than she had in years. Spring gave way to summer on the ranch. The days grew longer and warmer, filled with work and small moments of discovery. Delilah learned to ride, to gather eggs without being pecked, to churn butter until her arms ached. She tended the vegetable garden, putting up preserves for the winter ahead, and gradually took over more of the cooking from Mrs. Quinn. Beau taught her about the cattle, the rhythms of ranch life, and how to recognize the subtle signs of changing weather. In the evenings, he would sometimes play the harmonica while she mended or quilted, the simple tunes filling their home with a different kind of warmth. Slowly, carefully, they built a physical relationship, each tentative step forward guided by Delilah's comfort. Beau's patience never wavered, his touch always gentle, always giving her the choice to continue or stop. By midsummer, Delilah had come to know her husband's body as well as her own, the map of scars that told the story of his life, the strength in his hands that could be so tender against her skin. And Beau had seen all of her, every mark and memory etched into her flesh, accepting each as part of the woman he had come to love. For love had grown between them, unexpected and precious. Not the desperate passion of novels, but something deeper and more enduring, a partnership forged in shared understanding, in quiet moments and everyday kindnesses. In late July, visitors arrived at the ranch, a man and woman with a small boy, driving a wagon laden with trunks and crates. Thomas. Beau called out, genuine pleasure in his voice as he strode forward to greet them. "Sarah, what brings you all this way?" Delilah watched from the porch as her husband embraced the newcomers, lifting the little boy high in the air to delighted squeals. "Delilah," Beau called, beckoning her forward. "Come meet my cousin Thomas and his wife Sarah. And this little terror is James." The visitors were welcomed into their home. The purpose of their journey soon revealed they were moving to Montana territory and needed a place to stay while their own homestead was being built. "Of course you'll stay with us," Delilah said without hesitation. "We have plenty of room." That evening, after the visitors had retired to the spare bedroom and little James was tucked into a makeshift bed in the parlor, Beau pulled Delilah into his arms. "Thank you," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple, "for welcoming them so readily." "Their family," Delilah said simply. "Our home is their home for as long as they need it." Beau's arms tightened around her. "I love you, Delilah Nightingale, more than I have words to say." It wasn't the first time he had spoken those words, but they still sent a thrill through her. "I love you too, Beau." Thomas and Sarah stayed for 6 weeks while their cabin was built on land adjacent to the Nightingale Ranch. During that time, the two families grew close, with Sarah and Delilah forming a friendship that eased Delilah further into the community of Bannack. Having a child in the house also brought unexpected joy. Little James, 3 years old and full of boundless energy, attached himself to both Beau and Delilah, following them around the ranch and peppering them with endless questions. "You're good with him," Sarah observed one afternoon as she and Delilah watched Beau teaching James to fish in the creek. "Ever think about having one of your own?" The question caught Delilah by surprise. In her darkest days, she had assumed motherhood would never be part of her future. But now, watching her husband's gentle patience with the boy, something inside her shifted. "Yes," she said softly. "I think I would like that, someday." Sarah squeezed her hand. "You'll make a wonderful mother when the time comes." In early September, Thomas and Sarah moved into their completed cabin just 2 miles from the Nightingale Ranch. The house felt strangely empty without them, especially without James's laughter and endless chatter. "Miss them already?" Beau asked that evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the hills in gold and crimson. "A little," Delilah admitted. "It was nice having a full house." Beau's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining in the familiar gesture that had come to mean so much. "We could fill it again, you know, in time." The warmth that spread through Delilah had nothing to do with the lingering heat of the day. "I'd like that," she said, meeting his gaze. "Very much." That night, their lovemaking held a new purpose, a shared hope for the future they were building together. Autumn brought a flurry of activity as the ranch prepared for winter. Hay was cut and stored, wood was chopped and stacked, and the last vegetables were harvested from the garden. Delilah worked alongside Mrs. Quinn, preserving fruits and vegetables, making soap, and preparing the house for the cold months ahead. In late October, just as the first snow dusted the mountain peaks, Delilah missed her monthly time. She said nothing to Beau, not wanting to raise hopes that might be dashed. But when November came and went with no sign, she could no longer deny the possibility. There were other signs, too: a persistent tiredness, a queasy feeling in the mornings, a new tenderness in her breasts. Having assisted her father with enough expectant mothers, Delilah recognized the symptoms. Still, she waited, wanting to be certain before sharing the news with Beau. It wasn't until early December, when she was sure beyond doubt, that she decided to tell him. The opportunity came on a cold, clear evening. They had just finished supper, and Beau was stoking the fire in the parlor when Delilah joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Thought you might like something warm," she said, handing him one of the cups. "Thank you." Beau took a sip, then looked at her more closely. "You're smiling. What's on your mind?" Delilah took a deep breath. "I have something to tell you." Concern immediately crossed his face. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfect," she assured him, taking his hand and placing it gently against her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby, Beau, in early summer, I think." For a moment, Beau stared at her in stunned silence. Then his face transformed with a joy so pure, so unguarded, that it brought tears to Delilah's eyes. "A baby," he repeated, his voice filled with wonder. "Our baby," Delilah nodded, her own happiness reflected in his expression. "Our baby." Beau dropped to his knees before her, pressing his forehead against her middle, his arms encircling her waist. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "For this, for everything?" Delilah ran her fingers through his hair, her heart so full it might burst. "We did this together," she said softly, "just as we'll raise this child together." That winter was the happiest of Delilah's life. As snow blanketed the ranch, creating a peaceful isolation, she and Beau planned for the future, for the child that would join their family. They converted the spare bedroom into a nursery, with Beau crafting a cradle from pine wood, while Delilah sewed tiny garments and quilted a blanket. News of the pregnancy spread through Bannack, bringing a steady stream of visitors bearing gifts and advice. Mrs. Quinn became even more of a presence in their home, determined to ensure that Delilah remained healthy and well-fed. "You're glowing," Beau told her one evening in February as they lay in bed, his hand resting protectively over the gentle swell of her stomach. "I'm happy," Delilah said simply. "Happier than I ever imagined possible." As winter gave way to spring, Delilah's body changed, the new life within her making its presence increasingly known. The first time she felt the baby move a flutter like butterfly wings, she gasped aloud, calling for Beau, who came running from the barn, afraid something was wrong. "Here," she said, guiding his hand to the spot. "Wait." After a moment, the baby moved again, and Beau's expression of wonder was something Delilah knew she would remember for the rest of her life. "Hello, little one," he whispered, bending to speak directly to her belly. "You're Mama, and I can't wait to meet you." The ranch burst into life as spring progressed, new calves in the pastures, chicks in the henhouse, and wildflowers dotting the hills. Delilah found her energy limited as her pregnancy advanced, but she still managed the household and even began teaching at the small school in Bannack 1 day a week, sharing her love of books and learning with the town's children. In early June, with the baby's arrival imminent, Sarah moved temporarily into the Nightingale Ranch to assist with the birth. Mrs. Quinn came daily, and Dr. Roberts from town visited twice a week to check on Delilah's progress. "Everything looks perfect," the doctor assured them after his latest examination. "Strong heartbeat, good position, shouldn't be long now." Beau grew increasingly anxious as the time approached, hovering near Delilah whenever he wasn't absolutely required elsewhere on the ranch. His concern would have been smothering if it hadn't been so endearing, a testament to how deeply he cared for her and their unborn child. The labor began on a warm June night, waking Delilah from a restless sleep with a sharp pain that left no doubt about its meaning. She touched Beau's shoulder, rousing him immediately. "It's time," she said, remarkably calm despite the knowledge of what lay ahead. The next 12 hours were a blur of pain, determination, and finally, the most profound joy Delilah had ever known. With Sarah and Mrs. Quinn attending, and Beau refusing to leave her side despite tradition dictating that men should wait elsewhere. Delilah brought their son into the world just as dawn was breaking over the Montana hills. "He's perfect," Beau whispered, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he held his son for the first time. "Delilah, he's absolutely perfect." They named him William Thomas Nightingale after Beau's father and his cousin who had become like a brother to them both. Baby William had his father's wheat gold hair and his mother's blue eyes, a combination that everyone agreed made him the most beautiful baby ever born in Bannack. The weeks following William's birth were exhausting but filled with a deep contentment. Delilah discovered the challenges and profound joys of motherhood, while Beau took to fatherhood with the same quiet competence he brought to everything else in his life. By the time William was a month old, they had settled into a new routine, adapting their life together to include this small miracle who had so completely captured their hearts. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, William sleeping peacefully in Delilah's arms, Beau broke the comfortable silence. "I've been thinking," he said, "about your uncle." Delilah tensed slightly. Her past was rarely mentioned now, a shadow that had receded but never completely disappeared. "What about him?" she asked cautiously. "He's still out there," Beau said, his voice hardening. "Still hurting people, most likely." "Probably," Delilah agreed, her arms tightening instinctively around her son. "But he's in Philadelphia, we're here, safe." Beau was silent for a long moment. "I've written to a lawyer in Philadelphia," he finally said, "and to the medical board. Provided them with your testimony along with affidavits from Dr. Roberts confirming the nature of your scars." Shock rendered Delilah momentarily speechless. "You what?" she managed finally. "Beau, how could you do that without telling me?" "I didn't send them," Beau said quickly. "Wouldn't do that without your permission. But they're ready if you ever want to, if you ever feel strong enough to see him brought to justice." Delilah looked down at their sleeping son, so innocent, so untouched by the darkness that had marked his parents' lives. "I don't know if I'll ever be that strong," she admitted. "You're the strongest person I know," Beau said with absolute conviction. "But it's your choice, Delilah, always will be. I just wanted you to know that if you ever want to face him, to stop him, I'll be right beside you." Tears blurred Delilah's vision, not of sorrow but of gratitude for this man who understood her so completely. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Beau leaned over to press a kiss to her temple, then to the downy head of their son. "No, Delilah, thank you for answering that advertisement. For taking a chance on a stranger. For giving me this life, this family." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Delilah looked out over the ranch, their home, the life they had built together from the broken pieces of their pasts. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully, and closer to the house, Scout dozed on the porch steps. Inside, a lamp burned in the window, welcoming and warm. "We should put William to bed," she said softly. "Then perhaps we could sit by the fire for a while." Beau smiled, rising to his feet and extending his hand to help her up. "That sounds perfect." Hand in hand, they carried their sleeping son into the house, into the future they had created together, a future built on understanding, on healing, and on love that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings. Years later, when William was 5 and his sister Catherine 3, Delilah finally found the courage to send those letters Beau had prepared so long ago. Justice came slowly but inexorably. Dr. Elias Foster was stripped of his medical license, his research exposed for the cruelty it was, and eventually he was imprisoned for his crimes. The news brought not triumph but a quiet closure, the final chapter of a story that had once defined Delilah but no longer held power over her life. On the 10th anniversary of her arrival in Bannack, Delilah stood on the porch of their expanded home, watching Beau teaching William how to ride, while Catherine played with Scout's puppies in the yard. Her hand rested unconsciously on her stomach, where a new life was just beginning to make itself known. The scars remained, physical reminders of what she had survived. But they had faded with time, just as the emotional wounds had healed, transformed by Beau's unwavering love and the family they had created together. "No one hurts you again," he had promised on that night so long ago when she had first revealed her scars. And he had kept that promise, not just by protecting her, but by showing her how to be strong in her own right, how to reclaim the life that had almost been stolen from her. As if sensing her thoughts, Beau looked up, catching her eye across the yard. His smile, still capable of making her heart skip after all these years, held all the love and pride and partnership that had become the foundation of their life together. Delilah smiled back, a woman whole and healed, no longer defined by what had been done to her, but by the love she had found, the family she had built, and the strength she had discovered within herself. In the end, the mail-order bride had found not just safety, but joy. And the cowboy who had promised to protect her had given her something far more precious than protection. He had given her the courage to protect herself, to build a life filled with love, and to transform the scars of her past into badges of her survival.